you to give us?
It's always difficult. Like Dr. Lowe was mentioning, you want to see your return on investment as soon as possible. Of course, the challenge with diabetes is that the outcomes can take, adverse outcomes can take years to occur. But there are methods to do a projection based on short-term results. They aren't perfect by any means, but there are means to do so, and that's how we'll be presenting it to the board.
So obviously you can't track, long-term outcomes, but we have surrogate markers like hemoglobin A1C, weight reduction, etc. These are short-term markers that we know correlate with outcomes, and they're easily done, and they should be tracked. If we're not tracking them, then we need to be tracking them.
We'll be having that information for you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I just wanted to ask the question that, given what I did hear from the coaches, two specific things that were now being re-educated within the population that you're doing, one being portion size and the other being product ingredients, that as part of this survey, will there be, or should we expect that there will be advice to the state of California on what to be including in education in public schools, as far as the ability that if this correlates to something that is missing in the knowledge of the population you're surveying currently, and if those two specific items of knowledge are what is lacking in the education of that population, the population you're treating is only a microscopic portion of the state at large. So will you also be coming forward with recommendations on educational opportunities for the population at large?
Absolutely. I think that's a big part. I think that this is indeed a public health assessment, and there should be those types of statements made by our research team in our final analysis of our data.
Okay, Dr. Simonson?
Well, talk about barriers. If there's not even a grocery store, I mean, even if they know what to buy, if all they can find is a Twinkie, I mean, seriously, in addition to getting healthcare people, it sounds like we need grocery stores. I mean, I'm stunned.
Yeah, the concept is called a food desert, if you've not heard that term. And there are many areas that have high incidence within cities and in rural areas in which you can't get access to or low-cost fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, those sorts of things. And it's easy to get access to the incorrect things to be consumed.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm going to ask for a 5 to 7 minute recess. Then we're going to continue with item number 23 on our agenda. So it's now 16 past 11. I would ask that everyone be back in their seats at 11:25. And Ms. Minifield, don't go too far because you're going to be up soon.
is efficacy of the material. So, what are the plausible solutions to this, short term and long term?
Hope that was helpful.
I understand that you're. No, that's a good start.
I get emails.
Hey, you stick around, girl. You guys still with us? Oh, so you left already?
I do want to follow up on your people who don't think it was the stressful for
Actually, when I pulled out what they needed, because our 2011 meeting, listened to it, there was Dr. Sanders, great intro. Steal what he said. It was so.
actually I just called him.
Because it was like, you said what the perception is really is off.
Thank you very much.
It's often in there. It's like, no, it's not necessarily. So, glad I was able to.
Thank you really very much.
meeting, and I was hoping that there'd be a 5-minute break so I could say hi. So how are you? Yeah, we are. I never have a car. I think we are. Yeah, we should love to make time. Here I am. Looks like one of my coaches. Yeah. All right. I called that. If you she comes up, you want to go to the top of the came to the regulation hearing and stuff. So clear up that subject. There I am. All right, so good. One more question. Yeah, and I'm worried. I wish they would have even tied it to a phone number. So maybe I was September. Here's existing law. This applies to all hospitals, regardless of whether any department has to have the nurse to patient ratio for higher applies to hospitals and all hospitals. Once they tie it to that real number and say, I know they don't first time, say SB 132 implementation. Besides, there's no new law. It wasn't like they didn't document regulations. Communicate clearly. They don't even do real hospitals. Yeah, so but they're never gonna like but then I would put an office letter and say like clarify current law, you're never gonna get that out of them. But yeah, we can email like maybe we're in dire need of no, what I need is no choice other than fiction or non-fiction. You know, should we cook in or go out? You know? Oh yes. You know, Pinot or Syrah. Anything harder than that. Except what we want to do is be around the only problem with Hawaii is there are many people who I know who like it too. So I run into people in the Princeville market inevitably on any trip. Somebody from somewhere, and we pull our shades down and wave across the aisle. So good to see you, Sharon. Good to see you. Okay, yeah, because there's a lot of stuff. And I've had more than I gotta go. Bye. I don't know. I pulled one out that wasn't my own. I don't know where everybody Thank you. I'd like to get started. So if I could find a quorum up here at the table, I sure would appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on the agenda to item number 23. Item 23 has been deferred. It's a consideration of a petition to repeal section 1349. The author has asked for us to take that off, and that will be dealt with at the next meeting. So, thank you. So, moving to item number 25, I would ask Ms. Angela Minifield to please come forward. Provide a report on health care reform in California.
Good morning, members of the medical board. I am pleased to be here. I am Angela Minifield, the Deputy Director for the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development, Healthcare Workforce Development Division. Before getting started, I'll give you just a tad bit of information about how this presentation is going to proceed. First, I'm going to just give you a bit about the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development, tell you who we are. Then I'm going to talk specifically about the partnership that we've built with the California Workforce Investment Board to really focus our healthcare reform efforts related to the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about the planning grant that California has received to implement the various provisions of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act as it relates to developing the health workforce. This is a little bit ahead, so excuse me for a moment.
Technology is just great.
Yes, it is. Okay, so the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development is one of 13 departments within the California Health and Human Services Agency. We really focus on our vision, which is equitable health care accessibility for California. And this role really allows us to analyze California's healthcare infrastructure, to promote a diverse and competent healthcare workforce. We provide information about healthcare outcomes. We also are involved in the assuring that California hospitals and other health facilities are safe and that we review hospital plans and approve building permits for hospitals. We ensure loans to encourage the development of healthcare facilities in areas of unmet need, and we also facilitate the development of sustained capacity for communities to address local healthcare issues. We've been in this business since the late 1970s. Some of OSHPA's health workforce development activities are really focused on increasing health workforce supply and supporting existing healthcare workers, also enhancing healthcare workforce education and training through programs like the Song Brown Healthcare Workforce Training Program, and supporting innovations in healthcare delivery through our Health Workforce Pilot Program, which is a program that allows categories of healthcare personnel to test innovations in healthcare delivery. Some of the other workforce development activities of the office include strengthening primary care and other workforce improvements, improving access to healthcare services. We administer the Shortage Designation Program. That's the program that is responsible for identifying health professional shortage areas throughout our state, as well as medically underserved areas and medically underserved populations. We have a direct relationship with the Office of Shortage Designation at HRSA. So just to give you an overview of some of California's current health workforce challenges. We have a shortage of health professionals. We also have the issue that health professionals are maldistributed. We have a lack of racial and ethnic diversity in health profession categories. We also have insufficient numbers of professionals who are bilingual. There are the education capacity constraints that we face. We have varying scope of practice laws. We also have reimbursement policies that don't necessarily enhance our ability to attract providers to underserved areas. The economy is something that I know you all are aware of, and then we have an increased demand for healthcare services, specifically as it relates to healthcare reform, but also pre-healthcare reform. I'm going to talk to you for a few moments about the various elements of Title V of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Specifically, the Act has in Title V several workforce provisions. The first is about supporting innovations in health workforce preparation. And in that particular section of the Act, they created the National Healthcare Workforce Commission, which California has actually two representatives, Dr. Kathleen Flores and also Steve Zatkin, Mr. Steve Zatkin, who is a former executive for Kaiser Permanente. The Act is also focused on increasing the supply of the healthcare workforce, including funding provisions for scholarship, loan repayment, internships, fellowships, etc. It's focused on enhancing health workforce education and training opportunities and has provided a variety of funding grants that are targeting primary care residency programs, also physician assistant programs, nurse managed healthcare clinics. It's focused also on supporting the existing healthcare workforce and strengthening primary care and other workforce improvements through pilot projects. It also improves access to healthcare services, and you all are probably aware that community health centers and clinics have received quite a large amount of funding pursuant to the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act to enhance their capacity. At the state level, the office has partnered with the California Workforce Investment Board to develop a comprehensive strategy for workforce development. We did receive a planning grant to begin work that is, again, focused around the Title V provisions of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. This is sort of a history of the council. Specifically, the Health Workforce Development Council was established as a special committee of the California Workforce Investment Board, and the mission is really to expand California's health workforce to provide access to quality health care for all Californians, to also understand the current and future workforce needs of California's health delivery system, and develop a comprehensive strategy to meet those needs. It also has provided a broad forum for broad stakeholder engagement, and by that we mean we have sought the expertise of representatives of the healthcare industry, representatives of health professions education and training programs, philanthropic representatives, as well as advocates and economic development representatives, and we do have members of the legislature that also serve on the Health Workforce Development Council. We also have as a partner organized labor. The council is currently focused on the planning grant activities that I mentioned earlier. And again, the planning grant is really designed to provide a mechanism for collaboration and cooperation that will be needed between multiple sectors of the healthcare industry. It is designed to really allow us to work in partnership with not only state agencies, but also private partners that will be needed to really resource our health workforce development strategy. The planning grant has several requirements, the first of which was to really analyze state labor market information to create health career pathways for students, adults, and dislocated workers. Also to identify current and high demand state or regional healthcare sectors, to look at what resources exist at the federal, state, as well as private resources that are focused around recruiting, education, and training the healthcare workforce, as well as the prospective healthcare workforce, as well as those incumbent workers, to describe both the academic and healthcare industry skill standards that are required at various levels of the health professions education continuum, and also to describe state secondary and post-secondary education and training policies, and then to really look at federal and state policies that are either helping to develop, will help us develop a coherent and comprehensive workforce strategy, or that may be hindering us from developing a workforce strategy that really increases access to care, particularly in areas of unmet need throughout our state. As part of the planning grant effort, we held 11 regional focus groups. There were nearly 400 participants at those focus groups. And those focus groups really identified 4 sort of global themes around the alignment of education and training with industry standards, the need for more collaboration and partnerships, and a targeted focus on increasing cultural competency and diversifying our healthcare workforce, as well as developing career pipelines. Another effort that we pursued through this planning grant process was to develop a career pathways subcommittee that was really focused on some of the provisions that I mentioned earlier with relationship to the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, and really focused around existing and potential health career pathways that could increase access to primary care, the existing education and training capacity and its ability to accommodate these career pathways, and also the academic and healthcare industry skill standards that are required. The subcommittee also focused on issues of recruitment, retention, attrition, articulation and curricular disconnects, and identified policies that really are needed to facilitate the transfer of students from one education segment to the next. It also focused on the need for pilot or demonstration projects in eligible health personnel categories or new health personnel categories, and some of those things include like the use of community health workers and promotores. The Career Pathways Subcommittee reviewed pathways for 8 professions: primary care physicians, nurses, clinical lab scientists, medical assistants, community health workers. I won't read them all. But really, the Career Pathway Subcommittee was able to leverage work that was already been done. I should have mentioned earlier that part of the planning grant effort, because there are so many activities that are going on statewide to help address the health workforce shortages in a number of different specialties, we were really about trying to leverage work that had already been done. So the fact that the Career Pathways Subcommittee focused on these is not necessarily how the council has prioritized healthcare categories of focus. Rather, we were looking for cross-cutting recommendations that would emerge from our analysis of these 8 professions, and we have additional professions that we will be looking at, including physician assistants, also the alcohol and other drug abuse counselors. We haven't quite finished the work on that particular pathway, and home health workers and personal care aides. Some of the recommendations that have been identified throughout our planning process have included the expansion and institutionalization of holistic file review for admissions to really more so look at an individual's community background and upbringing along with their GPA and test scores and things like that. Increasing partnerships, again, between educational institutions and the healthcare industry to ensure that people are being prepared throughout their didactic and clinical training to meet the needs of the healthcare delivery system. And also the need to really integrate cultural sensitivity and responsiveness into the training program climate. The other recommendation is that we have insufficient means to collect data and report data about California's health workforce supply, and also to project the demand for healthcare workers. So one of the recommendations is really to establish a mechanism through the OSHPD Clearinghouse program. The clearinghouse at OSHPD is something that was statutorily mandated in October 2007. And I do need to acknowledge and thank the Medical Board of California because they've been a great partner in this regard as we strive to implement and launch the Healthcare Workforce Clearinghouse Program in June of 2012. Specifically, it would allow us to develop some baseline data about California's health workforce, and specifically, in this case, physicians, and help us to identify the supply of physicians in accordance with California's geography, help us to identify the racial, ethnic, language, background, and proficiency of physicians, and then also help us to assess our education capacity, medical education capacity, and specifically, but also in other areas of the health industry. There's also a need to establish a centralized database of interested candidates who are interested in pursuing primary care careers, and assure that there is communication with those individuals throughout the various levels of the pipeline. In terms of policy, there is a need to develop new California Department of Education standards and model curriculum, and that is an effort that CDE is already pursuing in accordance with the California Health Workforce Alliance. There's also a need to create federal policies that support the training of incumbent healthcare workers, to create interdisciplinary core competency standards, and to create policies to support the integration of healthcare professions education in primary and secondary education. The emphasis there is really on creating awareness of health career opportunities early on, and one means of doing that would be through introducing health professions education at the primary and secondary education level, which I know some will say is a very long-term strategy, but given where we are today with the insufficient numbers of folks that are entering health professions, particularly from underrepresented and economically disadvantaged backgrounds, that might be one way to educate people about those opportunities. Also to mandate cultural competency training and certification for new and incumbent healthcare workers. Some of the recommendations that emerged specifically regarding the primary care physician workforce would be to increase primary care career awareness among students, advisors, parents, policymakers, and the general public, to increase recruitment and retention of primary care team members in California, particularly in those areas of the safety net or underserved areas of our state, to again strengthen training program access and support, to increase numbers and the diversity of California primary care team members, and also to increase the number of California primary care residencies, particularly those residencies that are outside of non-acute care settings, and more so in community health centers, and increase the number of graduates who enter primary care. And then one that we heard constantly was the need to really develop supportive payment policies that would increase the attractiveness of primary care as a career choice. Again, the focus of the OSHPOD and California workforce investment work has really been to have broad stakeholder engagement, and we've done this through a variety of venues, through the Health Workforce Development Council meetings. The next meeting will probably be in mid-September. Through technical assistance calls, we often have technical assistance calls about federal grant opportunities, and we make ourselves available to provide letters of support to institutions that are applying for these federal grant opportunities. We also are involved in many other statewide organizations and initiatives that are focused on health workforce development activities. We have a website that includes information on all of our activities. So I invite you all to sign up on our website to get information about the grant opportunities and just to stay engaged about the state's health workforce planning activities generally. There's my contact information, and now I can take some questions.
Thank you very much. I'm sure all the board members here are well aware of your long time connection with this board, and I want to thank you again, not only from your work with OSHPD, but for your work at a moment in time with Health Professions Educational Foundation, which at the time was the Stephen Thompson loan repayment. So thank you for coming back again this year and for your information and insights. So do I have any questions from Dr. Drousseau?
Well, not a question, just a comment. Thank you very much, Angela, for a very informative presentation. I think this is the third one that we've had on workforce development for this board meeting. And the point I want to make is this particular one has, I think, some recommendations, if somehow we can figure out to implement them, would have some real meaning to address this problem. And I don't know what entity will have that responsibility for implementation. And I think we are going to hear other entities present on this issue as well. Even Barbara, the foundation board, will also be doing some discussion about that as well. So I'm most interested in us at least having a discussion about what entity or entities are going to begin to take a look at implementation. And that includes the previous presentation that was made by the University of California, of which I'm a member, and Dr. Lowe is as well. And we have some challenges there, as you have seen, and they're real. And I think they are going to become more and more critical, perhaps even a crisis if we're not careful going forward and to respond to this healthcare reform. So I'm interested in having a discussion about implementation.
So I would recommend that this afternoon's conversation on the strategic plan, that should come forward probably in goal number 6. That might be a good location for it. Do I have any other comments? Or yes, Dr. Levine?
Thanks so much for this. Is really informative, and I think one of the things that characterizes how difficult this work is those slides could have been up there 5 years ago and 10 years ago. One specific question is pharmacists weren't on your list. That is a growing need, and I think a growing shortage in the state. Is that part of your, is that an area of inquiry for you?
It definitely emerged as an area of inquiry throughout the focus groups as a means of addressing and increasing primary care access. For the Career Pathways Subcommittee, again, the focus was around existing bodies of work. We were leveraging existing bodies of work. So we will, at some point, look at the pharmacy workforce specifically, but we just have not gotten to that one yet. Thank you.
Any other? Thank you really very, very much. We're very appreciative of the time and the scope of the engagement of OSHPD within helping to develop future opportunities for closure, meaning being successful. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing from you again. So now I'm going to suggest that it's 5 minutes to 12. My understanding is I'd like to see a show of hands of how many people need to check out, or if we could return to item number 10 and start to check out. And lunch. Okay, so we're going to take, it's now just before 12. Can I recommend that those people that need to check out should check out? Lunch is available, and be back here at 12:30. Start. Thank you. Half hour. I mean, checkout should take about 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
3 minutes, and then lunch you can eat for 20 minutes. And bathroom break for 3 minutes. I would do better if I would have times here, but I don't have any time. You know, I don't have any time.
By the medical board to allow for a streamlined contracting process with expert consultants, which we heard about yesterday. In terms of regulations, the PA Education and Training Subcommittee brought forth a proposal to amend the regulations, and the committee moved to set this matter for hearing. Another regulation has to do with that would require PAs to post a notice to consumers like the medical board does, like physicians do. It's now in the Office of Administrative Law for review and approval. Legal counsel is also going to be sending a notification or letter to the Department of Public Health because there's been some problems with agencies recognizing a PA's order for physical therapy. The PA committee is also compliant with the travel restrictions, so they moved all the meetings to Sacramento to reduce travel, and then next year we'll decide whether or not there are going to be any meetings in Southern California. And finally, in terms of personnel, because the PA committee is very small, any vacancy creates a tremendous hardship, and we have a half-time vacant position in licensing, which is creating a backlog for the first time. And when they applied for an exemption, it was denied, and now we're resubmitting for another exemption. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Within your exemption request, I would hope that you are alluding to the fact that the work cannot be done and the workplace is being impacted by a lack of ability to do the work.
Yes.
The story needs to be very explicit. Thank you.
I'll let them know.
Make sure, please. I'd like to move on to item 12. Ms. Chang, if you would do a report on the Federation of State Medical Boards, please, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. There are several items I can report, but the first one I would say is since my last report, Miss Linda has been appointed to a measurement committee by the Federation. I think she already attended one of the meetings. And so that is a great thing for California to participate in that. And I did want to say we had an update on the maintenance of licensure committee, and it turned out to be there are 12 states in California, in United States, is going to participate in a pilot program. and the California DO board is one of them. So I thought it would be nice someday for the board to invite Federation to come over for a MOL presentation. And the third one would be there is a new concept comes out, and it will be what they call it data common, and it's by NBME and FSMB and possibly WMC, which will be jointly together put all the informations from from medical school, all the students starting from medical school, how they did at the schools, and how they did at the USMLE and their license status together in a cloud. I call it cloud somewhere, and then share the information among them all. It will be a big deal. You will hear more about it. And the next item would be Federation of State Medical Board has a foundation. We had a meeting recently, and we had new board members selected, and also we had new officers selected. And I got the job of treasurer, so my life is somewhat busier than I was. And I get back this Monday from Salt Lake City for Federation Board, and I'm going to Dallas this coming Monday to do Foundation Board stuff. So life will be interesting, but I'm learning a lot. And thank you for listening.
Congratulations on your new position. Wish you the best.
Thanks.
So, in your packet, starting on page 73, staff has included the 2010 annual report on the loan repayment program. On page 80 is a list of the award recipients for 2010, followed by a summary of applications for March 2011 cycle and new application due August 1st. I would call on Dr. Dussault if you'd like to add.
No, I don't have any further comments.
Okay, so what I would like to mention is that we were very fortunate with the collaborative effort of the state and the Health Professions Educational Foundation to offer another $1.5 million or $1.7 million out there for loan repayment for doctors. And we are hoping to finish the cycle this coming week with applications, and then appoint hopefully 20 to 30 opportunities, depending on the level of ability and access. So that we look forward to. So now I'd like to go back to number 10. Call Ms. Shipsky for a report on access to care, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a meeting of the Access to Care Committee, and we were very fortunate to have Deborah Ortiz, who's Vice President of Policy and Government Affairs for the California Primary Care Association. And she briefly went over what the association is attempting to do, as they are, like many other organizations, grappling with what is coming with the Affordable Care Act and the demands it's going to have, particularly in the state of California, with approximately 4 to 5 million new consumers of healthcare services that we don't have in place. So it was very instructive. We've asked her to keep us up to date in terms of what's coming from their association and their efforts to work to have collaborative care. We also talked about, at our next meeting, we'll have a presentation by Tony Sullivan, who wrote the book Collaborative Healthcare, which I understand our committee members do have a copy of, and she will make a presentation when we are in San Diego. And that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move on to item number 16. Board member communications with interested parties. I personally have had several phone calls with regard to appointees to this board with the appropriate representatives of both the Governor's Office and Senate Rules Committees. Otherwise, I really haven't had any communication with interested parties. Interesting, but not interested. Do any of the members on this board have anything to report as far as communication? Nothing? Okay. So then we'll move on to So before I begin on item number 17, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize the work of Dr. Marilyn Moran, as this is her last meeting on the board. And I want to thank her for her support and her engagement on this board, and most recently for her active participation in leading the advisory committee on physician responsibility in the supervision of affiliated health professionals. This is one of those responsibilities that a board president has, and that is to say goodbye to one of our board members, and I do so with a heavy heart. Dr. Moran has served on this board since 2004. She's participated as an active member of Panel B, the Education Committee, the chair of the Physician Responsibility and Supervision Advisory Committee. She even had one of the more enjoyable tasks for a board member, selecting a licensee to receive the board's annual Physician Humanitarian Award. The board also was proud to nominate Dr. Moran as a candidate for the FSMB's nominating committee, and she was elected to serve in that capacity. Dr. Moran comes from a long line of physicians. There are 7 physicians in her family. She completed her undergraduate medical degree at the University of Michigan via a combined program of only 6 years. She did her postgraduate residency in Boston and a fellowship in Toronto before moving to the Bay Area. Today she's on the voluntary clinical faculty at Stanford. For many years she has traveled to third world countries to teach physicians and serve patients in less advantaged regions, as well as serving victims of domestic violence. She also has been active in a tattoo removal program for former gang members. Mary Lynn, please come forward and accept this gift from the board.
Who would do that? Who would proper
How would I know about it anyway? Marilyn, would you like to say a few words?
I'll try not to get too choked up. I'm kind of an emotional person, but I just want to say it's been such an honor and a privilege.
Stop. Take a deep breath. Take a look at everyone sitting out there and imagine them sitting on a toilet.
And you guys definitely do something. Yeah. Anyway, it's been a real honor and a privilege to serve the citizens of the state and to work with an amazing staff who are so dedicated, in difficult times. And I just am so inspired by all the people I've worked with over the years on the board, and it amazes me how we all seem to be able to come together and do the best thing for the public. And again, I can't tell you how impressed I am with the staff and how much you do with so little, with such dedication and devotion. I want to thank you for everything.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to say anything?
I do.
Please.
Well, Marilyn and I come to the board together in the beginning, and I'm totally not knowing anything. And I remember the first night I grabbed the agenda, and Marilyn was the one. We sit in a corner, and there was Shelton, and teaching me what is the differences between cosmetic board and the plastic surgeon board. And I had to admit back then I know absolutely nothing. And I thank you for all your friendship for this year and getting all the knowledge. I can't say I have, but helping me through this all years. And thank you.
It's been such a pleasure to work with you and all the friends that I've made over the years. It's going to be serious withdrawal after 7 years.
Jerry?
Madam Chair, I'd like to also add my appreciation and thanks because you've done a tremendous job in terms of the committee, subcommittee on supervision of allied professionals. I mean, your focus and your bringing that to the attention of the board is so needed, and I'm hoping in some capacity they can bring you back, as an advisor on that, because I think it's an extremely important area, and I think the fact that you spearheaded that, as part of that dedication that you have to really making certain that we have quality care in this state. And it's been a real honor to serve with you. Thank you.
Mary, like the others who came with you, I'm one of them, in 2004, and it saddens me to see that you are leaving, and some of us are still around for another year. My hope would have been that you would have served the time like we are, and we'd all left together. But that is not the case, and I just want to thank you so much for your approach to the board's work. Very balanced, very content-oriented, and very committed to what you were and what you agreed to do on behalf of the board, and I thank you for that.
Well, Jerry said it so
Your microphone, please.
Oh, microphone. Jerry really said it so well, but I mean, all of your work, but specifically with the committee and how, from the hearings we had with the laser, just how you communicated so well in what could be a very contentious environment, always with strength, but always with such tact. And I really think a role model for just all kind of collaborative things, but never compromising on the big picture, always bringing us back to it. So you've been a role model.
I too would like to add my appreciation for having the opportunity to work with you, and I just love your passion about these issues, and you're always so clear thinking, and it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Dr. Carrion?
Marilyn, thank you for your guidance and your friendship. Thank you.
Dr. Levine?
And the only thing I have to offer is a Kleenex.
Mr. Gill?
On behalf of the investigators, we'd like to thank you for all of the help, the training, and your participation at the statewide investigator training conference. It was invaluable, and we really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Really, thank you. So, moving on to the President's report. There are the committee appointments. There are no members on the Physician Recognition Committee currently, and continuation of this committee is subject to discussion in our strategic planning process. Thus, instead of making appointments to this committee, I would like to hold off until the full board has made a decision on the continuation of this function. The Special Programs Committee needs a physician member, and thus I would like to ask Dr. Carrion to serve on this committee. Dr. Carrion, okay?
Yes,
Thank you.
of course.
Also, I'd like the board to know that this last quarter I participate in a monthly conference call chaired by Director Brian Steger and other Healing Arts Board presidents, chairs, and/or the representatives, their EDs and EOs. Those minutes are now being provided to this board on a regular basis. And if you have any issues that you'd like addressed in addition to what is being done currently, please let me know. The topics covered are relevant to all of the boards, as well as gives us the opportunity to further clarify issues that we may have. The major topics have been the hiring freeze, breeze, travel restrictions, and the budget. On June 15th, Ms. Chang and I, along with our ED, Linda Whitney, and our assistant ED, Kim Kirchmeier, met with the agency secretary, as I told you yesterday, and her assistant, Undersecretary Willie Armstrong. They seemed very supportive of the board and understood its need to be removed from the freeze and various restrictions. She stated that she was hopeful that executive orders would be issued as soon as provide some relief. In addition, we discussed the operation of safe medicine, and our lack of a public information officer. Those conversations are ongoing. She's been very supportive, and she heard that very well yesterday. So moving along, I'd like to ask Director Steger was supposed to be at our meeting today to address us this morning, but unfortunately he's been tied up with an emergency in one of the other boards, not ours, thank goodness, and he apologizes for not being present. So moving along, Ms. Whitney, would you please present the Executive Director's report?
I would like to start with an introduction of our new Deputy Director, Kim Kirkmeyer. If you'll stand up, please. Kim returns to the board. Kim served 18 months as Deputy Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs, but made a very wise decision to come join us. We have a lot of things that need to be moved forward, especially our Breeze project. Kim has been very actively involved at the Deputy Director level in that project, so brings a very valuable resource to us, because we will hear more about that, but we will be in the first group that converts to that new computer system. That's very, very important. The one thing I get to do as Executive Director is that I get to meet and greet new staff and provide assistance, training, advice on their careers in state government. It's very exciting and a wonderful opportunity for me. One of the sad parts is saying goodbye to staff that have decided to move on with their careers and have chosen a career of retirement. That has always been something that we in state service kind of look forward to at some point in our long careers, but we have one that significantly impacts all of you as board members. And so I would like to call Ross Locke forward, and our board president has something for you. Ross, if you could please come forward, please. Sure. This recognizes Ross and states, whereas Ross Locke, Business Services Assistant, will retire on August 31st, 2011, with more than 10 years of outstanding meritorious service to the state of California, Medical Board of California, and the Contractors Board. Whereas Ross began his career with the Medical Board in January 2009 as a Business Services Assistant, and whereas in recognition of Ross's diligent work and demonstrated ability, he has gained the respect of all of those who have had the privilege of working with him. Whereas as the result of Ross's extensive knowledge, expertise, background in sound system equipment, he served as our sound engineer at the board and committee members of the Medical Board since 2009, and was instrumental in the purchase of new sound equipment for the meetings. Whereas Ross mastered the art of performing various business services functions to provide this medical board and its staff with the needed equipment and assistance to ensure operations continued running smoothly, and whereas throughout his full term of service, Ross has served the people of this state with fairness and true dedication, therefore be it resolved that we, the members of the Medical Board and staff, do hereby extend Ross Locke our sincere and grateful appreciation for his dedicated service to the Medical Board of California and to the state of California. Our congratulations on his well-earned retirement. Boo-hoo. And our best wishes to him for continued success, happiness, and good health in the years to come. This is adopted in Sacramento, California on this 29th day of June 2011 by the full board. Everyone signed it for you, and we wish you the best.
Thank you.
And not only does he do a good job, but he's a really nice person.
want to say something? Ms. Shansky? No. Okay. With the retirement of Ross, Ms. Kirkmeyer will address that more. We will have another vacancy in our business service operation, and that does impact us significantly, but we hope to have those vacancies filled so we will not have any interruption in our ability to perform the sound services for this board at our future meetings. And as well as taking care of the staff, because one of the functions of the business services office is to make sure that staff has all of the equipment and supplies they need. So again, thank you very much, Ross, for all of your help here. And as I stated, Ms. Kirkmeyer is taking over all of the administrative functions. Thus, I am turning over this part of the agenda to her.
Well, good afternoon, and it's actually very nice to be back at the medical board. I'm really looking forward to working with everyone again, and I actually want to thank Miss Whitney for keeping my spot warm. It was nice to walk back into my office and see the same yellow stickies up on the wall that had been left. In regards to the staffing update, I know it's been talked about a lot under both the enforcement and the licensing report, but at the last meeting, Ms. Whitney indicated there were 61 vacancies at the board, and this number did include the Consumer Protection Enforcement Initiative positions that we were able to obtain through the budget change proposal process. As of July 1st, 2011, the board has 58 vacancies, including those CPEI positions. However, this number does take into account moving 6 positions from Operation Safe Medicine Unit into existing vacant positions due to the loss of the authority for that unit on July 1st of this year. So basically the true number, if you were comparing it with what Ms. Whitney presented last time, would really be 64 if you added those 6. But we did have to move those over. This number does not include 7 future vacancies that will be occurring due to retirements or staff transferring out of the board within the next couple months. So 58 vacancies for the medical board actually equates to a 20% vacancy rate here at the board. We are still allowed to hire individuals within the board and also from the Department of Consumer Affairs. However, we still need to request freeze exemptions to fill any positions with individuals outside the board or the department. And speaking of that process, we've actually submitted 8 freeze exemption requests to the Department of Consumer Affairs. And as Ms. Threadgill mentioned earlier today, 3 of those freeze exemptions were approved by the governor's office. Those included medical consultants for both our licensing and enforcement unit, as well as 4 of our supervising investigators. 2 of those 8 freeze exemptions are actually pending at the Department of Finance, and those are for 6 office technician positions in the licensing unit. Mr. Warden mentioned those yesterday. And then 5 investigators for the enforcement unit. So all of those are pending at the Department of Finance. The next step for them is actually for them to go to the governor's office, hopefully for approval. And then moving on, the last 3 are actually pending at the department, and those 3 are for a public information officer, for 3 associate governmental program analysts for the licensing unit, again going back to what Mr. Warden said yesterday, and then an executive and an administrative assistant for the executive office. We have 3 positions in the executive office and 2.5 of them are vacant. So that kind of explains how we have other individuals doing 2 jobs at this time, because we do need to keep that front office answering telephones and doing the duties that they need to be performing. We're currently working on 3 other freeze exemptions to go over to the department, and those are for an advisory medical consultant, for inspectors, and then also for an associate governmental program analyst in the enforcement unit. And as vacancies continue to come forward, for example, the ones in our business service office, we will continue to move those freeze requests over to the department. Are there any questions on staffing?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So of the information that we've heard, I heard you say that there are 3 requests currently at DCA.
Yes.
How long have they been at DCA?
Okay, so the public information officer was sent over originally June 21st of 2011. On July 13th, we were requested to provide more information, more detailed background, and that was submitted to them on July 18th. The associate governmental program analyst was sent over on July 20th. And the executive assistant, administrative assistant was sent over on July 12th. We were requested more information, and that was submitted on July 20th as well.
Okay, so I would hope that by the beginning of the week you would have some information on those, because otherwise I'll ask you on Thursday what the statuses are again.
Absolutely, and I did check on those before we came, and for the most part, 2 of them are pending at the budget manager review, and then 1 is pending at the budget analyst. So that's where we stand right now. And we'll definitely continue to follow up on not only those, but also the ones at the Department of Finance, because we have had a change in individuals who review those, the analysts, the principals for the Department of Consumer Affairs, and in my opinion right now it's taking a little bit longer, probably because of the transition in knowledge for those individuals. So we'll continue to follow up on those.
Thank you. Continue, please.
Okay.
Any questions on those staffing? No.
Moving on to the budget update, I would actually like to take just a moment. We actually lost our longtime budget analyst, Debbie Titus. She retired at the end of last month. And I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Tamiko Hine. She is our new budget analyst. We stole her from the Department of Consumer Affairs in their personnel unit. And the 2 of us are kind of like the blind leading the blind in there for right now, but we're working our way through the budget. Tamiko does have a background now, as I said, in personnel, but she's actually picking up the reins very quickly, and she was able to produce these reports with the assistance of Ms. Titus right before she left, so we hope we can continue moving forward in that. So I'd actually like to have you turn your attention to tab 18, and you will find the budget reports on pages 86 through 94, and we're going to just start right at the top. On page 86, it shows the most recent fund condition for the board. On this document, you will see that we are actually projecting to revert, or basically not spend, approximately $2.5 million in fiscal year 10-11. And this is due mainly to the restriction on the hiring for the last year. We do not have the final fiscal year 10-11 reports, so it is still a projection. And at the next board meeting, we will provide the final closeout for fiscal year 10-11. The fund condition also shows the $9 million loan to the general fund in this current fiscal year. And it also shows the board obtaining the funding in fiscal year 12-13 for the operation of Safe Medicine Unit, once we hopefully get that again. You will notice that the fund condition shows the board going to 1.5 months reserve in fiscal year 13-14. However, please keep in mind that this is really based on figures that we have right now. This doesn't include adjustments that will be made throughout the year, as well as assumptions that will change, including any reversions due to the hiring and travel restrictions or any other executive orders that we may receive. And in that regard, I'd like to move on to talk about a recent request from the department, and actually it was discussed briefly yesterday by Secretary Caballero. And on July 21st, 2011, we received an email from the Department of Consumer Affairs stating that the State and Consumer Services Agency had asked the boards to look for ongoing savings in our budget. This savings is in addition to our current salary savings that is required, as well as our workforce cap and the normal budgeted process. The direction provided was that the boards would identify a 5% savings plan, and for the board, this equates to approximately $2.5 million. Now, we did have several questions, and fortunately, we did receive some direction yesterday by Secretary Caballero, indicating yesterday that this was a drill at this point, and then she also indicated that this was a one-year plan, is how I understood it from yesterday. So board staff will work to review the budget and identify the savings, because we do have to have this reduction plan submitted to the Department of Consumer Affairs by August 8th. So we will be working on this with board staff next week. This 5% reduction obviously is going to have an impact on the board's fund condition, and the board will have to critically watch its spending over the next fiscal year. But as that money gets reverted, that will change our fund condition from that 1.5 month reserve in fiscal year 13-14. Are there any questions on any of that?
Well, just, maybe it should have been back on staffing, but just out of curiosity, do you have a sense of the vacancy rate in the other healthcare boards? Because 20% seems high, and then another 5% down from that. Do you have a sense of the vacancy rate? Because they presumably have the same sort of constraints as furloughs and retirements. And
I would say they're similar in about the 20% range.
Really?
I've heard 22. I've heard one as high as 26%,
Wow.
and that was vocational nursing. They have a very large percentage of vacancy, and it could be up from that right now. But as we've kind of talked about with Ms. Whitney, I think she's mentioned this, and other of Mr. Warden and Ms. Fredgill, we're just churning positions right now because we've kind of reached our maximum. And I think that it may be to where we get to the point now with, and I'm maybe going into too much detail, but we have a list when an individual basically gets laid off, that individuals go onto that list. And if individuals we're promoting, we aren't going to be able to hire anybody because that list, whose individuals outside of the department, are going to stop us from being able to hire. So I would expect if that continues in that forward momentum that we will not, our vacancy rate will increase.
I want the members to understand very carefully that what we're stuck between is the ability to hire from within DCA and not from any other state entities, so that the budget of the state of California is not being impacted one iota by virtue of the fact that we are hiring from within DCA. It would be effective to allow us, in fact, to hire from outside of DCA, to take those members that are employed currently by the state of California off of those doles and put them into the healing arts boards or whatever bureaus and boards they're specially funded. Understand very clearly also is that the state understands the dilemma that's going on. The problem is that they're not stepping up to the plate to fix it quick enough. The best thing that can happen is that this will impact our ability to do the work. And then by virtue of the fact that it impacts our ability to do the work, that maybe then we'll see some relief, to be honest with you. I mean, I hate to go that way, but I'm starting to feel that that's the only way to get our point across. So realize that your staff has done an unbelievable job on trying to make lemonade out of lemons. And understand that they've got all the support that they need to get it done. But any opportunities that you feel to have a discussion with anyone that you would like to have a discussion with, feel free to discuss. Ms. Whitney?
I just wanted to respond, Dr. Solomonson, to your question about other health boards. Actually, all of the boards within and bureaus within the Department of Consumer Affairs have probably a 15 to 20% vacancy rate. I just spoke with Contractor State Licensing Board, and theirs is 15 to 18%. So we're all in that same problem, and we are hiring from each other to fill our positions. So as soon as we get something, we will probably lose a position to someone else. So it will not play catch up until we can hire from outside.
This is robbing Peter to pay Paul, if you've heard that term in action.
Okay. Moving on to the next page, it actually shows the board's actual expenditures as of May 31st. And as you can see, this is where we based our projections on that we're going to revert approximately $2.5 million. And again, these aren't final yet. We are waiting for the final figures for the closeout of that fiscal year. The next 4 pages show the budget report specifically for licensing and enforcement and the HE expenditures. So unless there's any questions particular to those pages, I'm actually going to move on. Page 92 shows the enforcement receipts received in the last 3 fiscal years. And as you can see, we've actually received more money in the last fiscal year, and that was mainly due to an increase in probation monitoring monies received. And the next page shows board member expenditures through May 31st. And then the last page is a synopsis of the board's budget and expenditures by each different program. Are there any questions on any of those reports? Okay.
Questions? No.
All right. And the last item I wanted to bring to your attention is recent direction we have received from the Department and State and Consumer Services Agency. We were recently told that with regard to any requests for budget change proposals in which the board is seeking additional position authority, agency is going to look at 3 main elements. The first one is there a structural imbalance at the board, meaning that the board, are they receiving less revenue than they're spending each year? The second is, will an increase in spending authority require a refund of any general fund loan? And the third is, will the increase require a fee increase for licensees? The board was told to take a serious look at these questions prior to submitting any future budget change proposals. We've done this, Ms. Whitney and I have looked at it, and we both believe that this should not impact us at this time. So we're going to continue to move forward with any budget change proposals we deem necessary.
I'm sorry, the third point with respect to the...
Is, will it require an increase for the licensees?
Thank you.
And for this particular board, because we have an outstanding fund, a new loan to the fund, they would actually have to provide that before we could actually even go to licensees for a request.
And that augmentation request is for the operation of Safe Medicine to reestablish it.
Okay. And with that, I'm ready to move on to the Breeze update unless there's any further budget questions.
Do you want to tell us about the travel?
Yes. I was notified this morning via an email from the Department of Consumer Affairs that the travel for Mr. Shunky is approved for the month of August. So you guys did very well yesterday. So we're very excited that he can move on and those individuals won't have to be canceling the program. So that's a good thing. And it was only for August, but I have every belief that we will continue to be obstinate and make sure that we get the rest of the year.
One day at a, forget 1 month at a time. One day at a time. I want to make sure that that's included in a thank you to the secretary for what she heard yesterday. We all need to realize that. That's much appreciated.
Very good job.
Good job.
Very good job.
Okay, and I'm going to move on to the Breeze update. I'm going to be a little bit quicker with this. As you know, the Department of Consumer Affairs has been working for the last year and a half, including all of the board staff as well, to put into place a contract to replace the existing and outdated licensing and enforcement databases. The project, which is called Breeze, has reached several major milestones. The vendor has actually been evaluated, and based upon the fact that they only had one vendor who had a compliant bid, we actually only received and were able to open one cost proposal. The costs were higher than anticipated. I think you all know that. So the department actually entered into negotiations with the vendor. After the negotiations, the department was able to reduce the original proposal by $11 million without changing the scope of the project. Although the proposal is still higher than anticipated, this was a number that the department believed was justified and is still affordable. We had to prepare a special project report that required approval by both State and Consumer Services Agency as well as the California Technology Agency. And that report was just approved last week, supporting continuation of this project. So we're still moving forward. And then due to the fact that the change in the funding amount, or the fund amount changed in the project, the department also had to prepare a Section 11 application that requires Department of Finance approval and then a 30-day notification to the legislature. I was just notified this morning that actually the Section 11 is actually sitting on the Chief Deputy Director at the Department of Finance's desk, so we're hopeful that that will get signed and then move on to just that 30-day notification to the legislature. We are anticipating entering into a contract at the end of August. So that is great news. And in all of this, with all the negotiations that we had to do, we were only 1 month behind on our project from when we first started. So that's something as an IT project, I think it goes to really the dedication from board staff, the other board staff, as well as the Department of Consumer Affairs. The department and the board staff have had calls and discussions actually with the vendor to discuss some of the requirements and to ensure that we're ready when the contract is signed. The project, even with the need for negotiations and everything, is still scheduled with the release anticipated for July of 2012. So we're still on board for that, which is actually 6 months prior than what we had originally thought. We have a lot of staff working on this project, and we want to thank them for the time they've put into it. And at this time, the most significant risk is data conversion. So both the department and the board will be working with the vendor to analyze and document the current systems in order to mitigate this risk. So unless there's any questions on the Breeze update, that's my report.
Thank you. My only recommendation is that after what we saw at the University of California, Davis yesterday in the hematology department and the barcoding opportunities, that maybe your Breeze project might want to contract with UC Davis to see if they can assist in a smooth transfer.
Yeah, you're doing good.
Moving on to the board meeting dates and locations, but before Ms. Kirkmeyer leaves, the one thing that she mentioned was the risk of data conversion with the Breeze project, but I think it also is a risk for us if we don't have enough staff dedicated to ensuring that that conversion take place and all of the records, reports, etc. that we need from that system correctly happen. And it will take more staff than we currently have dedicated to that. So we will be pulling part of different people's time, so a small portion of different people's time to help with that conversion, and that will impact our being able to get work done. So we will be all hands on deck for the next 6 months to make sure that that happens, as well as all of our work. So we understand that we have a challenge in front of us, and it's really an opportunity. And so we want to make it so and get the best product that we can from the Breeze. So moving on to locations for October 27th, 28th meeting. We heard loud and clear that you would like the meetings throughout the state. We know that other boards and committees have made decisions to have all of their meetings in Sacramento. We are confident that we can get staff down to our San Diego meeting. Probably will not be the number of staff that we would normally have at a meeting. And if it's not, then we will have to look at our committee structure and whether all the committees can actually meet or if they need to be off cycle. So we know that a major issue at our October meeting will be the strategic plan. That will be taking quite a bit of our time, but we'll also be analyzing if we want to have other committee meetings and if that staff would be available to participate in that. Travel is not just overnight travel. If we have to fly, that's an issue with travel. If you have to stay overnight, that's an issue with travel. So all of those things have to be looked at, but we are hopeful that with the 5% reduction exercise, that the freeze might in fact be lifted and we will be able to travel as necessary.
Questions?
Well, I guess because we didn't have licensing this time and we lived without it, but I hate to say this, but I think if it means giving up some of the committees that I think are important, I think I'd rather see us in Sacramento. If it's a risk, we can't have the committees respecting public access, but if I'm understanding that we may be compromising the extensiveness of the meeting.
So I agree with you, Dr. Simonson. I think that our executive director has also expressed that as well. The option is to go forward as we are today with the expectation that there will be changes in the freeze and the travel restrictions, and if not, staff will make that determination based on the best effort. But I think that we should go forward with our expectation that we are going to continue our mission, which is to try and be as engaging as we can around the state. But at the same time, our executive director knows best how to make sure that happens.
The other option that I did mention was off-cycle committee meetings, having some meetings that are not at our regular board meeting. I know it's very difficult to plan that, but that may have to be something we examine if we can't have all of the committees at the board location. But we will weigh that as we get further along. We're hopeful we can be in San Diego with all of the staff and all of the committees that we need. but we also know that it is a strategic planning time, and so we'll have to dedicate time to that too.
Well, again, not to beat that horse, but I do think having other off-cycle committees is going to generate more expenses too.
Okay, any other, okay. So the dates? Wait, is this part of your report?
Yes, I will. In your packet, you will see the listing of the proposed 2012 board meeting dates as well as locations. And the locations are general locations. I've heard someone mention that in the Los Angeles or the San Diego area, we might look at an opportunity for Riverside or Orange County. Those are possibilities. But first of all, I would like your approval of the dates and the general locations, and if they're going to change from this, we can come back to you, or if you have a recommendation of a change, that would be helpful.
Yes.
I'm sorry, page number 95.
You want that in the form of a motion?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Second. Second.
Any public discussion on the motion? Any questions or information from board members? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Thank you very much.
So that concludes your report? Yes. So now we'll move to item number 26, which is the election of officers. At the July 2009 meeting, the board voted to change the date it holds its election of officers from the last meeting of the calendar year to its July meeting. The board also voted that the newly elected officers officially enter into those positions at the conclusion of that board meeting. I would like to open up the nominations for president of the board.
I would like to nominate Barbara Yaroslavsky to continue as president.
I second.
I'll second that too.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to do this job? Or not be nominated? All right, so if there's no additional nominations, I would ask for a hand vote of the members so that you may be counted. All those that are in favor of this motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. I would like to now open the, so I've been nominated, I'm supposed to say. I would like to open up the nomination for vice president of the board. Any nominations?
I'll nominate Janet Solomon for vice president.
Okay, any additional nominations? Hearing none others, I ask for a hand vote on the, from the members so that you may be counted. All in favor of Janet Solomon to be vice president, please raise your hand. Any opposed?
Well, I won't oppose, but
So, Dr. Solomon, you have been so elected, okay? Thank you. I would like to open up the nominations for secretary of the board.
I nominate Jerry Shipsky for secretary of the board.
Second.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I ask for a hand vote for the members so you may be counted. All in favor of Ms. Shipsky to be nominated? Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, congratulations. I'd like to allow the newly elected officers to make a statement, a short statement, please. And or you may wish, that's fine. Anyone that's not going to, would anyone like to make a statement? Dr. Samuelson, Ms. Shipsky? Hetty, would you like to say anything? I want to thank you for your time on and service on the as secretary, and you'll.
Well, I think it's great to have new people on the us officers, and we need to get everybody up gear for the future leadership. And I've been there long enough, and I'm in reality too busy. I'm flying here and there, and I won't be able to do as good a job as you do. Although I'm pretty good anyway.
That's true. Thank you very much. So, agenda items for the October 27th, 28th meeting. Any members have any requests for items on the agenda?
This might be more for the licensing committee, but I would like to have an addiction medicine specialist to give us a talk on diagnosing substance abuse disorders and the criteria for determining when a physician is fit to practice with these various diagnoses, to help us, certainly in licensing. I think it could apply to enforcement also, but I'm thinking for the licensing committee, if we could find that suitable.
Thank you. Dr. Carrion?
I think that go along with the experience that I had recently. I assist to the very fort for a lecture for 5 days about chemical dependency in general. Since we see doctors having this problem, I thought that for me it was very important to have more knowledge. These people are experts and very renowned around the world, and my suggestion will be to try to bring one of them or a group of them to give us a lecture, initially to us as members of the board, and probably for the staff too. I think will be something very, very good.
Thank you. Any other suggestions?
I'm wondering if at some point we could have some kind of update with the governor's pending order to release quite a few out of prison, many of which who have medical conditions. How is their medical care going to be addressed as they're released back into the population?
Okay, thank
Particularly
you.
since counties are being cut with their funding. So it would be helpful to hear from the administration how in fact that's going to be taken care of. And then the other issue, I know we had someone the first day come in. It is an ongoing problem, folks, about this issue of our fictitious name unit giving fictitious names to medical marijuana clinics, and then physicians who really do not do a good faith exam, issuing recommendations, not prescriptions, but recommendations that are then in turn used to be able to obtain medical marijuana. It would be helpful if we could revisit, because that's an enforcement issue on our part, but also the Attorney General, I understand, has just come out with some new guidelines about medical marijuana collectives, and might help to have an update with the board so we know that what we're doing is in sync with what the Attorney General is trying to enforce out there as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Yes, Dr. Levine?
This may not necessarily be for October, but I don't want to lose the conversation stream we had around educating the board around directions in maintenance of certification, maintenance of licensure, particularly the work that the Federation is doing. And so once the strategic plan has been completed, perhaps agendizing updates from the Federation and from someone from the American Board of Internal Medicine around maintenance of certification for ABMS specialties.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, so feel free to be in contact with staff if you've come up with anything else that you'd like to be included. So now I'm going to move on the agenda to item number 28. And Ms. Cordray, would you like to come forward? Dr. Levine, do you want to sit from here or you want to sit from there? What's good for you? Just good. Just good? Okay. We're going to go into strategic planning in just about 10 seconds, as soon as we find Ms. Cordray. So for the audience, you should understand what's taken place is we've had a committee meeting, a subcommittee of strategic planning, Dr. Levine and myself, and Ms. Whitney and Ms. Kirchmeier and Ms. Cordray participated in a teleconference meeting on the strategic plan and directions for the future. And the executive board met on Wednesday afternoon for a few hours, and we continued this discussion with the clarification that Ms. Cordray was able to put together. She's been amazing about being able to capture the insights and the expectations of this board with phone calls and interviews in person and both via the phone. And then taking those combined ideas, putting them together in a print form, and then having the executive board then, along with the facilitator from the Department of Consumer Affairs, allow us to further drill down where we were going. And now what she's coming forward with is another production, meaning a produced report. And I don't mean production, I apologize. A produced report. So the ability to take and synthesize everything that's been going on has been truly remarkable. And I personally would like to compliment her and compliment the members as well for being able to give succinct information to you. Now, did I speak long enough to get you so you could sit down?
Yeah. You should all, I think Sharon has given you it's dated July 29th. Those that you were not on the committee had the one that was dated earlier that we all looked at.
Excuse me, Ms. Cordray, the microphone, please.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Just bring it closer, or
Is
project
it,
more, or
okay.
do something.
I don't think anybody has ever said I speak too.
No, but this goes into direct line.
Okay. Well, in the interest of time, as I'm sure that most of you are looking to move the agenda along and get out of town, I'll be extremely brief. With the chair's permission, I'll give you a TV guide version of where we've been, what we've done, where we plan to go, and ask your permission to go there. What I'll do is basically refer you to the written report and ask if you like it. The report represents work by staff, the Strategic Planning Committee, Dr. Levine and Mrs. Yaroslavsky, and the Executive Committee. In a nutshell, I interviewed board members and surveyed staff in June to obtain ideas for our strategic plan. I compiled all of the responses, and the Strategic Planning Committee met to whittle down the ideas to those that might be appropriate for the plan. And the cut was made because of appropriateness to our mission and mandate, whether or not we thought we could write some kind of objective that could be measurable, and those kinds of criteria. Based on the committee's work, a report was written for the review of the Executive Committee, and that was in your Executive Committee packet. The Executive Committee met on Wednesday and came to the general consensus on the mission, goals, and ideas to be refined into objectives. Those ideas can be made into objectives that can be measured. Today, we're asking you to concur with the Executive Committee's opinion and add or subtract any ideas you have about the direction of the plan, and then staff will begin to work with the Strategic Planning Committee again, and then the Executive Committee, to further refine the ideas and develop the 2012 strategic plan. If there is a concurrence by the committees, a first draft of the plan will be presented in October, and hopefully a fully developed plan will be drafted and ready for adoption in February. What staff needs from you today is your concurrence with the committee's outline of ideas, and to add any new ideas you feel are appropriate, or to subtract those that you believe to be inappropriate. I will now refer you to the written report and ask that you either approve it in total so that staff can move forward, or to add or subtract to it. Regardless of what you decide today, I will be available to you by email or phone, and would ask that you contact me with your ideas and suggestions. Those of you that were not interviewed, if you still would like to be interviewed, I'd be happy to conduct one with you. I'll be working with the board's committee to draft the plan, and for those that you weren't interviewed, it's not too late. With that, we can either go through the written report, or if you all have had a chance to peruse what we've done and would like to just motion to take it, it's entirely up to you and the pleasure of the president.
I would recommend that we should go through it out loud.
Okay. The mission that we have in that written report is the mission that was adopted in 2008 in that plan. Now, the Executive Committee, well, let me say, in the interviews, some members, a minority, but a very close amount, voiced concerns that the portion and to promote access to quality medical care through the board's licensing and regulatory functions might be beyond the function and ability of the board. The committee was of the opinion that it simply stated promote rather than ensure, and therefore was appropriate to the board's authority and mandates and should remain intact. So they are of the opinion that that should remain our mission statement. So shall we do this, Ms. Yaroslavsky, shall we do this section by section?
I would recommend that's a good idea.
Okay.
And we'll take a motion for each section.
Sorry.
Oh, I apologize. No?
I was just going to make a comment.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, just a comment, and I think what the conversation ended up with is that the board's contribution to promoting access to quality care was through its core functions in licensing, enforcement, and discipline.
Yes.
And carrying out those functions effectively is in fact contributing to promoting quality care for consumers.
So if you want to do it on a section by section basis, the mission.
Section by section? Sure. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to adopt the mission statement as written.
Second.
Is there discussion? Is there public discussion on the motion? Is there any questions or clarification from members of the board? All those in favor of the mission as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so done. Thank you.
Okay, in the goals, the goals were adopted. The goals that the executive committee adopted in the written report. There are 6 of them. There were 5 in the original 2008. We added a 6th because many of the ideas during my interviews with the members really didn't fit in the previous 5. There were a number that really dealt with more public health issues, and so that is represented in number 6. So those were proposed from the Strategic Planning Committee to the Executive Committee, and they adopted, or I should say they concurred that those 6 goals seemed appropriate. So, the goals.
So, the goals. Yes, Dr. Carrion?
In number 3, you see consumer and professional education. Professional means the doctors.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Samuelson?
And again, forgive me, but I thought maybe yes, on our previous discussion. Sorry. I thought maybe at our previous discussion on number 6, we were saying understanding the implications of the evolving healthcare environment. Did we not think the healthcare reform might be too specific, or am I misrecalling that?
That was put in one of the objectives.
Okay.
But I don't believe it was part of the goal.
Okay. Only because the same thought process might apply if that's so specific to a particular, piece of legislation, and it's perhaps broader than that.
So how would you prefer to?
I thought the terminology we had thought about using is understand the implications of the changing either healthcare environment or evolving healthcare. I thought that somebody made that.
That was changed
Was to follow the healthcare.
But we can change
But shouldn't it parallel it at the beginning? If we say it when it's 6 is being fleshed out, should it not perhaps be there?
We did change that, and I think you're right.
I thought that's what I was recalling.
Yeah, no, you're correct.
The goal itself ought to have the broader language.
The same language that we use later, yeah. So on page 2, and then when it shows up again on page 8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So 2 and 8 will be, also within number 3, I don't think we clarified that number 3 would have increased public and professional education or professional awareness. How do we want to do that so we mirror at least the title to be similar, as Dr. Carrion noted? Okay, somehow to stick something.
I think education sounds a little better than awareness.
Increased public education, fine.
Yeah.
What about professional education?
Too, the same.
And can
Yes.
So you're asking to add it to increase public and professional awareness?
As you have the title, Consumer and
Right.
Professional Education,
Right.
Increased Public and Professional Education of the Board.
Yes.
And I wonder, just listen to Dr. Carrigan's question, if professional is too vague, would licensee be a more appropriate term for that title? Because it's clear, it's clearly our intended audience.
Okay, definitely.
More inclusive.
Thank you. Any others on any clarification on the goals? Other clarifications, questions? So now we have a motion to approve the goals as listed and tweaked. So can I have a motion?
Before you do
I
that,
apologize.
I read it to you to make sure that we're.
Oh, please, sure, I'm sorry, sure.
Okay, so it will be number 3, number 2 and number 1 as is. Number 3 is consumer and licensee education, increase public and licensee awareness. Number 4 is as is. Number 5 is as is. And number 6, we will have understanding the implications of the changing healthcare environment and evaluate how it may impact access to care and issues surrounding healthcare delivery, and with the same.
So it's the same language on 2 and 8.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Now may I have a motion to accept the goals as
Yes.
tweaked? Thank you. Second. All those, any public comment on the goals? All those on the board in favor of the goals, of the motion to accept the goals as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? So it's done, thank you.
Okay.
So moving on to page 3.
Now, I would like to set this up a little bit. The ideas for the objectives are all taken from the ideas from our interviews with the board members, staff surveys, and they have been now vetted through the executive committee and the subcommittee on strategic planning. The way that they made the cut was it appropriate to our mission and our mandate? And could it be written into an objective that is measurable? As you will see from some of the ideas, they're not measurable because they're not fully written objectives. So what we're asking for here is it appropriate? Do you think that we can draft it into an objective that will be measurable and appropriate and practical? So with that in mind, shall we read these ideas and see if these should continue to stay in this to be developed into an objective for the plan? Is that how we want to do this?
You want to, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And just another comment. I mean, I think these are all still in very draft language, so we're really focusing on being sure we don't have either inappropriate concepts
right
in here, or that we've missed something just from a conceptual level. And there's a lot of staff work to be done prior to bringing back a next draft with more precise language, I guess.
Right, and also, I mean, like I say, these are not objectives. These are ideas to be developed into objectives. So what we're asking is the conceptual buy-off on these. Do you think that if they're even practical to be written into objectives? So, and we've categorized them under the 6 goals that were adopted. Some of them overlap and might be more appropriate in something else, but at this point, that's where they are. So the first goal is professional qualifications. Promote, okay, we've changed that now, but at any rate, the first one that might be an objective is examine and identify methods to ensure physicians remain current. The second one is current CME should be examined. The board should invite organizations that accredit CME, such as ACGME, IMQ, ABMS boards, and their member societies, to educate the members on how requirements have changed, what is required for course accreditation, what is done to ensure compliance, and so forth. In addition, the whole concept, practice, and the requirements should be evaluated to determine if they are relevant to keeping physicians current, including elements of the training that promotes education in cultural issues that affect medical practice. Obtain and present the board membership statistical data on the scope of CME in California, as well as compliance data from the board's audits. The third one is conduct a study to define what is necessary to promote safe re-entry into medical practice after extended absences. Establish a committee to examine the FSMB Maintenance of Licensure Initiative to study what should be adopted in California and how it can collaborate with the FSMB and ABMS certifying boards. The next one is develop a plan to conduct a comprehensive new review of international schools to ensure the board has accurate information in order to identify those that may need site visits or additional information. Also, names and locations should be updated in instances where schools have moved and changed their names. Part of this review should include an update of the school's application process, updating the surveys and evaluations, determining if application fees cover the board's costs, and identifying ways to expand the approval process. The last one is conduct a study of disciplinary actions, taking into consideration individual professional qualifications, including the performance of disciplined physicians while they were in training. I would ask that a discussion on any one of these that you would like to.
So, Dr. Green, is this okay? No? I think it's good. Yeah? Okay. So for the first goal and the first goal under professional qualifications for ideas for objectives, it's broad-based enough. It seems to cover what we're looking for. Anyone have any additions or changes, or it's a work in progress, so we just make sure that we're going in the right direction. And I think that this behooves Hetty as a member of the board of the FSMB. I hope that this is information and process and policies that you'll be able to be involved and engaged with and bring back to us as well.
Yes, I would love to.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Our representative from the FSMB representative, Dr. Ramkrishnan, actually had talked with Linda, and the Dr. Chaudhry, which is the CEO, they both expressed great desire, wanted to come to California and give you the presentation.
We'll look forward to that. Okay, so I'm not sure that we should adopt this. We just
I just want conceptual buy-off.
Right, I agree, but you've heard that you're on the right track.
Okay.
So let's continue.
Okay, and again, you can phone me with your ideas that you want added to them later if you feel the need. The second goal is regulation and enforcement. Protect the public by effectively enforcing laws and standards to deter violations. Under that, the following are the ideas for objectives. The first one is develop a plan to conduct a complete review of all laws and regulations relating to licensing to identify which are no longer relevant and what needs to be added or eliminated. Identify requirements that may no longer be necessary to the safety of practice, but may be serving as barriers for qualified applicants, as well as simply updating requirements to be congruent with current educational environments. The second one is develop a plan to conduct a complete review of all laws and regulations relating to enforcement to identify those that are no longer useful and augment those that are needed for public protection. Identify the board's regulatory authority for promulgating new regulations, and also identify those issues that require legislation. The next one, conduct a review of the vertical enforcement model to assure uniform implementation of all offices and identify any redundancies that are increasing costs without producing benefits. Part of this review should include examining enforcement timelines to identify which areas may delay the process. Next one, examine complaint handling priorities. educate members on how complaints are prioritized, as well as the legislatively mandated priorities. Determine if there is a need to change those priorities. Next, study disciplinary cases and final decisions to identify trends or issues that may signal dangerous practices or risks. Examine the expert reviewer program and policies to determine how it may be improved, including recruitment, evaluation of experts, opportunities for education, and policies governing the board's use of experts. Next, identifying opportunities to better educate experts and administrative law judges, hearing officers. Work to clarify the board's responsibility to regulate outpatient surgery centers and obtain the resources to be effective. Examine board responsibilities that could be eliminated or moved to a more appropriate board, bureau, or program. That would include midwives, registered dispensing opticians, spectacle lens dispensers, research psychoanalysts, and others. The approval of non-ABMS specialist boards as well. A member of the public at the executive committee offered the following suggestion. Examine the trend of the decline of reports required by Business and Profession Code Section 805. It was noted that that was a very productive complaint source, and they thought that there should be a study on the trend of decline of reports. And that's it for that particular goal.
So I would like to offer also the idea that we should be aware of what peer review in a hospital means, how it is effective, how it affects what we do, how it ensures that what is happening. I would like a review of the understanding for this board, but not a board training so much, but board information. I think it's important that when we hear that 805 reports are down, I think that's okay, that's good. But what happens in an 805 report in a hospital situation? What does peer review mean? How confident should we be in that process? How well is it doing the job that it almost becomes like a strategic partner, the system. Help me out.
Sure.
Trying to remember what our discussion was on this.
So I guess the board sees the output of the peer review process, which is the 805 reports.
Right.
To some extent, there's a black box between the output of the 805 reports and the degrees to which peer review processes are common across hospitals and health systems, and the degrees to which they vary, and some education for the board to understand the elements of what goes into a robust peer review process, and what other 805s are kind of the end point. What other interventions, if you will, do hospitals, health systems take to address early warning signs of problems, either from
trends are in discipline, be it substance abuse or quality of care issues, that maybe at that point also that should be also included as to what's the prep in the educational institution to ensure that doctors, in addition to be totally competent in what they do, are going to be able to do it without issue.
Well, it's kind of,
I'm sorry.
In a way, it just made me think how many physicians don't have peer review because they are so office-based that they don't admit to the hospital. And solo practitioners, basically who don't have, and again with the hospital, is they're not having to bring their patients to the hospital. And I don't know, I mean, that's a future trend, and I don't know, it just hit me at this moment, how can we get a sense of how they're doing? I don't know, that's just a question.
Thanks. Dr. Carrion?
I think that the peer review in this state is broken. And basically I feel that its control should be controlled by the doctors, but is controlled by administrations in the hospital. That is one first point. Second point is the 805, that is a consequence of the peer review, is being underreported. Several organizations that they have cases that they should report it, they don't report it for different reasons. And this is something I think that the proper agencies, they should start taking care, because this is something that I see.
Okay, thank you. Any other additional items on that section? Yes.
Just a comment and a reference back to the last bullet under Goal 1. And I think the intent of that bullet was the medical board has a large database of disciplinary actions. Is there a way to mine that data to look for things which might signal future problems? You know, is there a way of looking at patterns that emerge from examination of that data that might signal alertness to future problems for licensees?
Very good, thank you. Is that okay, Ms. Codre?
If everybody is agreeable.
So we're agreeable on number 2, okay, number 2. So let's move on to number 3, please.
Number 3 is the goal consumer and, okay, we've changed that to licensee education. The first one is improve and expand professional education outreach, including outreach to students and new graduates about the laws, regulations that govern medical practice. Utilize the website and newsletter to inform licensees of issues relating to legal responsibilities, changes in law and regulation, practice patterns, and tools such as telemedicine, translation methods, opportunities, and so forth. Issues of public health and cultural and linguistic literacy as well. Educate physicians about complying with the law. Initiate programs to promote the board's information and programs to its licensees. If resources permit, send every physician a new handbook with license renewals. At present, they're only sent to new licensees. Perhaps reestablish a speakers bureau, expand the newsletter, and conduct outreach to various organizations such as hospitals and practice groups. The next one is improve public education by expanding current outreach efforts and initiating more outreach programs to educate the public on the board's programs, the rights of patients, and how to file complaints. The next one, identify more effective methods to promote the expert reviewer program to recruit qualified physicians. Next, evaluate the appropriateness and effectiveness of the Physician Recognition Award and the methods used to promote nominations. Establish a more assertive approach in communicating with the media to educate consumers and publicize disciplinary cases and criminal investigations, including those done in cooperation with other agencies. Expand the newsletter to better educate physicians if the cost is not too great. Evaluate and improve the board's website. Expand the board's website to create a portal that provides an intuitive and searchable web experience. Develop more online services and surveys to improve the board's programs. Examine how the board might provide trainings to the profession via the internet, including hosting webinars on subjects of importance to public protection and public health. Establish a method of holding public briefings taught by legal or enforcement personnel on disciplinary cases, the laws violated, and other issues of importance to the profession and the public. That's it.
So on that category, and within that category, would it be appropriate to add additional education tool of outreach to ethnic and neighborhood newsletters and other professional organizations newsletter, both in their native language as well as ours, as well as what's done currently. I think the issue that what I hear over and over again is that we all know what we're doing. We're all talking to each other. We seem to know what's going on. The issue is where there is a disconnect is within the community of the consumer. That the newsletter is helpful. It goes to licensees. The web is great if you have a reason to access it. The issue is how do we reach down and reach out to the broader community of our consumer community. Dr. Salmonson?
I don't know, but I know internationally when we communicate, the radio seems to be big, and I don't know if in various communities there are specific favorite language stations for the different language communities, and that does take away the ability to read a question or time to read. If
The ability to hear.
To their favorite channel in their, you
So
know,
I just want to
preferred
include, so
language.
that should be included, so ethnic and neighborhood.
So outlets, whether they're electronic media or newsletters
just
or
consider-
La Opinion or
And
whatever.
whether they're English or not, it's irrelevant.
But because the literacy thing, the language, if it's spoken by a native speaker on their favorite channel.
Yeah,
it's true.
You know, favorite music channel.
Addition, yes.
I thought I heard yesterday that with respect to educating physicians about complying with the law, you're going to add students to that category
Yes,
as well, so
yes,
that when
yes.
they're preparing their applications.
So that would be under,
The first bullet.
first one? Okay.
Yeah, that's in the first bullet.
So put it in number 3. So if you,
The first bullet has,
under number 3, if you
Last
if you look on
line on
page 5, the last line on page 5, add the word students and physicians, educate students and physicians, the last line on page 5.
okay. I will go through this when we do the, and add things like students since,
So we're okay on this goal number 3, correct? Yes, okay, so seeing that, we're going to move on to number 4. Continue, please.
Okay. Fourth goal is organizational relationships, improve effectiveness of relationships with related organizations to further the board's mission and goals. First one is improve relationships with elected officials and their staffs, build and tighten collaborative relationships to work toward common goals, create partnerships on areas of common interest. Next one is work with California medical schools and training programs on common needs and goals. Create a better partnership with them on educational issues beyond licensing requirements, such as those relating to professionalism, ethics, professional behavior, and so forth. And as an aside, this was not like what Kevin is presently doing, talking about how to apply, but on issues that we see from our disciplinary cases or trends or whatever, to work with the medical schools. Work to establish better relationships with the accreditation agencies, associations representing hospitals and medical groups, professional associations and societies, the Federation, federal government agencies, and other state agencies, including Department of Consumer Affairs and State and Consumer Services. Improve educational outreach to hospitals, health systems, and similar organizations about the board and its programs. Educate the profession not only about the medical board, but all of the health boards and DCA. Reestablish a speakers bureau or some other outreach for this purpose. And that is it for 4.
Do I have any additions to suggestions? Okay.
And you'll note that some of the things we've already discussed also have an educational component, so they may end up under education, Okay, number 5 is goal is organizational effectiveness. Evaluate and enhance organizational effectiveness and systems to improve service. Conduct a review of all outside agencies' billing, which would include things like Department of Consumer Affairs, Attorney General, Office of Administrative Hearings, and so forth, to identify redundancies, save money, and promote better efficiency. Next, conduct an annual review of all of the committees established by the board to determine if they are still needed, if they are fulfilling the purpose for which they were established, and determine if they should continue, be eliminated, or merged with other committees. Evaluate and enhance organizational effectiveness through the establishment of criteria for a periodic self-evaluation procedure. Establish a means of better educating staff about the board's activities and priorities set by the membership, including encouraging field staff to attend meetings and board members to visit field offices when they are at or near the location of board meetings. Establish a means of better educating the board membership about operational activities by providing tours of headquarters, district or regional offices when they are at or near the location for board meetings. And that ends that goal.
I'm going to suggest adding a sub-bullet to bullet number 3. Evaluate and enhance organizational effectiveness through the establishment of criteria for periodic self-evaluation. I think I'd like to add a bullet that says at least investigate the feasibility of a brief online survey of licensees recently licensed about their experience with the licensure process. We focus a lot on timeliness and throughput. It might help the licensing staff to get some feedback from licensees about what it was like to go through that process.
So like a survey monkey kind of operation.
Exactly.
So
Cheap and easy and
fast and quick.
Right.
Not a lot of questions.
Yeah, and I like that, but I was thinking about something in that area too, is people are using the social media to promote their organization a lot. Is that something permissible in our area? The Twitters and the Facebook.
No, yes, it is permissible, but there are many downsides. So if you would like to examine the feasibility of that, that would be fine. It's something we can look into, but it's something that you need to be changing quickly. Many organizations have Facebook pages. Many organizations use Twitter. That is something that we can look into, but you have to do it with good planning.
And a lot of resources.
And some resources. But we could look at examining it as part of what you want to do. It is the future of communication with the growing younger public.
Yes. Yeah. And a potential way of interacting not just with the licensee community, but also with the public in itself, maybe more than a website even.
And on the fourth bullet, where we say including encouraging field staff to attend meetings and board members to visit field offices, I would like to put field and headquarters. I wouldn't like to leave out the headquarters staff or leave out you visiting the headquarters staff at their offices too.
Okay, so are we okay on goal number 5? 5, anything additional? Okay, thank you. Would you please continue? Goal number 6?
Number 6 is goal access to care, workforce, and public health. And of course, we've changed that to implications of changing practice environment. The first idea for objectives is educate the board of the new healthcare reform law and how it may impact physicians' practice, workforce, possible shortages, and utilization of allied healthcare professionals. Study and identify appropriate methods to deal with evolving medical practice environment in how it affects patient care, such as examining methods to deal with workforce shortages, scope of practice of physician extenders, technological changes, including the use of diagnostic and communication technologies, licensing requirements, and other relevant issues to be identified. Next, in general, identify issues and areas in which the board may assist in promoting better public health. And that's it for the last goal.
So do we have any additions or corrections or thoughts, or everyone's okay with that, it seems? Thank you. Continue.
Okay, that's it for the goals. Now, after today, we will work to improve this. I and executive staff will work with the strategic planning committee to further whittle down things into measurable objectives. There'll probably be an executive committee meeting in between or at the next one. It depends on our ability to travel and so forth. And hopefully we will have a first draft plan that can be presented at the next full board meeting. At that point, we will probably have a half-day meeting where everyone can truly weigh in, and then we can engage in wordsmithing and more specificity. And then after that, hopefully, we will have something that is a final draft that will be presented in February and ready to hit the road in 2012. But that's the plan for now.
So let me ask you a question. Within all of these laudable opportunities for moving forward with the strategic plan, a lot of this is going to take intense staffing, money, resources. And what I'm wondering is, as part of the next process, do we want to take a look at prioritizing within each one what staff feels are achievable, let's say 1 year, 3 years out? Or do we want to wait till everything's in place? I mean, what would I think we need to hear that we've given staff a great direction. The committee is more than willing to do the work, but the issue is what is realistic. So from that perspective, do you think it would be fair, Jane, or Ms. Cordray, please, to go back now to staff and take a look at each one of these things, to take a look and see how best to either prioritize or massage and I'm just concerned that if everything is going to take 1,000% energy, we're not going to get anything done.
Yeah, can I make a process suggestion for that, which would be to do some preliminary work getting this in language that is clear. And then once we've agreed on that, to have staff and the board members do a 2x2 grid in terms of desirability of investment in that, and then feasibility.
Wow.
And then looking at how the rankings are, we can then prioritize the work for staff and then bring it back for public discussion and a vote.
That'd be helpful. Very helpful.
Yes.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay.
Well, that ends this evening's performance. I would again provide a commercial that if you have not been interviewed and you would like to be, please give me a call, email me, and we'll set something up to talk about your ideas.
Barb? So I'd like to also echo that and encourage all of us around the table here to, if there are any additional ideas or ideas for objectives or ideas or suggestions of goals, anything, to feel free to email Jane directly and give her that input. I think that it would be helpful. Dr. Levine?
And I just want to echo Ms. Yaroslavsky's comments about the incredible amount of work and thought that Ms. Cordray put into this. The four of us were the beneficiaries of your work, and it made the task doable, and I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
So do we at the end of 4 years look back at our previous strategic plan and say, yes, we've done this and we have not done this? And, I mean, what is...
We did that.
Well, for the new, that will be part of the plan, is that we, including the committee, that it's really not productive to just have goals and not have any way of measuring them or reports. So part of our final draft will include methods in which the board will be able to see evaluations and how we're progressing on those things.
So wait, Dr. Lowe, because I know where you're going or where you're going. We had a discussion specifically on that line of questioning at the executive board meeting on Wednesday afternoon. And on Wednesday afternoon, we wanted a status report and a work plan of measurables to be presented to this board, because the issue is we can come up with a strategic plan every 4, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, and do nothing. So we definitely want to know that the work that we're investing and the time we're investing in this work will in fact prove out to have some measurable outcomes. So wait 1 second.
If I can take your attention to page 227, you'll see that many of the objectives as written didn't really have a clear measure of how we would determine if we reached that objective. As an example, assure greater compliance with CME requirements. The measure was improve compliance with CME requirements. It doesn't say to verify through an audit or have the audit conducted, increase the audit, and what the results should be compared to what they were before. Starting in 2008 and looking at what we have in 2011 as an example. So unfortunately, many of those objectives that were written in 2008 were not measurable. Some of them are, and some of them we did complete. So we're trying to be more diligent with this strategic plan and ensuring for the board members that we do have objectives that can be measured, so you in fact can have a report back, show if we're getting there or not.
So Dr. Lowe, my apologies for interrupting you. Now please continue.
Well, I think basically our ability to achieve the strategic plan is a report card for the board. So we should have something that's realistic, that we can truly meet, that truly is going to benefit and protect the public. I mean, we should set our goals to something realistic and not something pie in the sky that's absolutely unachievable, which is what I read into the document now.
I agree with you, 100%. And I think that Dr. Levine and your executive staff are at the same place. We're going to have, once this document comes forward again, after it's been massaged and tweaked, the object is to prioritize what we can do, what we realistically can do, what we really can't do, and we have to take a look and prioritize what we can do and how to measure the outcomes of what we can do.
See, I think, we should absolutely be very good at what we're supposed to do. Our core activities need to be absolutely perfect, and we need to improve those and make the best they can. Then we can do extra things. But we have to do the basics well, and, it should be bulletproof.
I agree with you 100%.
Right.
Any other comments on the strategic plan? I want to thank you again. Oh, wait, excuse me, a public comment. I apologize. Public comment? Anyone? Public comment? Oh, I apologize. It was under another comment. Mr. Sheik, please come forward. Remember 3 minutes, please, sir.
Sure, Madam Speaker. Thank you so much. I was fortunate to attend the meeting for the strategic plan, and there are like 6 points, and members discussed all the points, and there were 2 of the issues they were struck off that the members wanted to do. Number 1, review of the Medical Practice Act was eliminated from the strategic plan. And number 2, there was another issue that how we make decisions. Let's look at decisions. Where are our faults? Where are our errors? And Dr. Solomon, I think she gave a pretty good suggestion that we need to review what our decisions are, so we can find, if there are any mistakes or errors. After both of these issues are eliminated, I don't know what is the purpose of the strategic plan. And if we want to see how we are doing this business, can we do a better job? Then why eliminate things? couple of other points that I wanna raise that I have not raised before. I mean, I've seen Dr. Solomon couple of last year. She gave a pretty good suggestion when there was we were review the draft of the investigation, and she was like really, I think she had excellent points. You know, let's have like 2 responsible people, 2 sworn people as licensing, 2 sworn people. Like sworn people versus unsworn people. What I can think is like responsible people or less responsible people, you know. I mean, I'm certain all the people, they are doing good job, but what if, you know, chief of licensing or chief of another branch of the government is on vacation or, you know, out for lemonade or something, you know. I mean, my complaint with the members is like having to like you know, they sometimes, many times I've seen members coming up very good plan, but you know, after a little bit unknown opposition it is being dropped, you know. I mean, one specific concern is that, I mean, we are we have executive staff, we have qualified people, they are doing their job, and we have board members, and in our system of government we have administrative agencies. They are, I don't know, branch of constitution, they are like 4th segment, and there is a new deal. So I mean, traditionally only so it's like bureaucracy, they don't want to be accountable. I mean, general complaint of the people, you know, and then we have board people. And I don't know, I mean, if there is any other purpose for the board, you know, to make people accountable so we can eliminate errors, we can fix things, you know. I mean, I'm not asking you to give me an answer, but I mean, is there any other reason for having you find people to be here? I'm sure you are bringing something valuable. We need to think of that. 2 objections. Someone said that you know, we need to think of quality care, access to health in all our decision makings. We are administrative agency. By definition, we have a fixed and defined duty. Okay, you know what? You have an applicant for license. It comes from UC Davis, it comes from ABC school, CDE school. We look into our medical school list, I don't know, 1400, 1000 medical schools is one of the schools. We said, okay, this person can be approved. I don't know how we can exercise, you know, these policy issues in an administrative role. Other problem.
You're going to have to wrap it up, please, sir.
Other problem, just someone said that, Dr. Lowe said that, yeah, we have to think of protection of public. If you don't know, I mean, recently, State Bar, 19 of the 23 members submitted a written report rejecting protection of public. And the argument is simple. You know what protection of public has to do with licensing of professionals?
Okay, your time is up, but thank you for your comments. Do I have any other public, any other public comment sheets? Ms. Thompson? So I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, members.
Yeah, right. It's just hard to follow.